To us, it might be all too familiar, but to you, it could be like listening to Blinded by the Light by Bruce Springsteen, only to go, wait now, isn't this a Manfred Mann Earth Band song? And then you only get to find out that the boss did it first because, Matt, I'm taking on a mental pretzel in this one. This was a fight that was booked May the 8th, and Ryan Benoit weighed in at 129 pounds for the second time in his career when he's supposed to fight at 125. So he weighs 4 pounds over championship weight, 3 pounds over the divisional weight limit, and he looked like absolute death. Now, the last time that we saw somebody weigh in, and it was this scary, it was my gal, Lithuania's own, Yulia Stoliarenko, and it didn't work out for her in her fight against Julia Avila. But overall, if you look at it for Ryan Benoit, again, it really is tricky in terms of the weigh-ins. I mean, we've seen him fight at 135 pounds in the UFC, took on Alatang Li in a really close competitive fight over in China. But getting ready for this one again, the last time he weighed 129 pounds was against one of the Mokhtarian brothers. That was back in November of 2017. Originally, this fight wasn't supposed to happen on this date. Again, they booked it in May. It fell out, but it was supposed to be Juan Camilo Ronderos, who was supposed to be taking on Zarrukh Adashev. Now, all of a sudden, he draws Ryan Benoit again at 125 pounds. So, Matt, in terms of this video, well, we've already done it. So what we're going to do, we're going to clip that original prediction video in. Most of it still stands. And then at the end, we're going to update you with our final thoughts and the odds for this one. Ryan Benoit, he's taking on a really high level of competition. You might not like the record. It's 10-7. But if I go down through here, let's just pick some of these out. Anthony Burchak, that was an early one. He also took on Josh Sampo, Canadian. Sergio Pettis, Ben Wynn, Freddie Serrano, okay, well, that's fine. Brandon Moreno, Ashkan Mokhtarian. Then he took a long time off, fought Alatang Li, and that was one, that was a really close fight. I know Matt at the time, like going back, thought that Alatang Li won, but still, it was close. And then he fought Tim Elliott his last time out. That one was back in July. Fairly competitive fight if you go back and look at it. They each threatened with submissions. They were able to get takedowns. They were able to strike. It was a close one, 29-28 across the board. That's fair. Second round, probably the closest of the three. But a competitive fight against a guy who's also been there and done that. Now you're taking on Zarrukh Adashev. And Matt, we had this conversation last week, and I saw a lot of people out there in the comments section. Randa Marcos is terrible. She's 10-10-1. All right, slow your roll. Hey, there was a knockout in that fight, kind of, and pretty unfortunate. But Zarrukh Adashev is a special kind of 500 because he's 3-3, and you look at it, he lost his debut against Cody Mooney back in 2015. Then he took over 3 years off from MMA. This guy's a kickboxer. He has a 16-3 kickboxing record. He competed with Glory. He's fought some decent names. You go back, like, he's a really flashy striker. Yes. And when I hand it over to you, that's kind of the big point that you have to hammer home with Zarrukh Adashev. But again, level competition. Cody Mooney was 1-1. Christian Medina, 0-1. Ron Leone, 0-2. That was Bellator 215. In 2019, this guy was fighting 0-2 fighters. He fought Tevin Dice. First round was competitive in that fight. Tevin Dice, all right fighter at 3-1. Second round finished him, and that's when Zarrukh started to gain his confidence. Then he comes in and replaces Ryan Benoit and fights Tyson Nam back last year and gets starched early.
He did get... Oh.
And he missed weight.
Exactly. So this is my problem for Adashev. Right now at 3-3, he is in this weird point in his career, and I'm going to compare him to Joe Rogan's favorite kickboxer, Alex Pereira, because he's kind of also in this same category, where I'm pretty sure Pereira's his MMA record, he's like 2-1. As an MMA fighter, he's very inexperienced.
Now he's coming up. He's coming up with LFA, Alex Pereira.
Hear me out, though. But in MMA, he's fighting guys who are like 1-1. Guys who should not be in the cage with him because his level of experience is way higher than what it really is. And really, he's going to hurt most guys who are at his level of experience in pure MMA just because he is so good outside of it. Trust me, look up this guy's kickboxing highlights. He is very good. He's not just hyped from Joe Rogan. But with Adashev, here's the weird thing. We talk about the flashiness of his striking. He has very fast spinning back kicks, very fast spinning back fists. He's a guy who's not afraid to use his spinning techniques either. He's a guy who can span them sometimes, kind of like Merab Dvalishvili. I know you've been kind of critical on his spinning back fist, but he's a guy who kind of overuses the technique. And I know I've talked about this before with Adashev, but I'm going to keep on bringing it up. I'm going to feed this horse until it dies. I don't know if it's the big gloves that they use in kickboxing. I don't know if it's him worried about the takedown. There's just something different between him in kickboxing and him in MMA. And I haven't been able to put my finger on it because he's so susceptible to getting hit to guys who, yes, they're high-level strikers. Like, losing to Tyson Nam by knockout is not the end of the world. And losing to a guy like Sumanerji, who is a very high-level striker, it's not the end of the world. But when you look at Adashev's level of competition, and when you just look at really what you think his striking or what level it should be at, he hasn't shown that in the UFC up to this point. Even in the Sumanerji fight, like, Munerji's a guy who can get hit quite a bit, but offensively, he's a really tough fighter to deal with. Munerji just walked forward on him and really didn't have that much respect for the counter-striking of Adashev. With Adashev, I really do think it's one of those cases of when you're moving forward on him, he can strike and he can put things together, but his success really comes from moving forward. And when he's the one who can figure out the range in the fight, that's when he's going to have the most success. It's interesting, though, because if he's the one moving forward on a guy like Ryan Benoit is one of the few knockout artists in this division who, if he does catch you with a big shot on the feet, he's going to put you down.
With Sumanerji, the thing, too, if you go back, you look at the second round against Zarrukh Adashev, Zarrukh started to get some confidence, and then the third round, it was just, oh, okay, Sumanerji's just going to pour it on again. So for Adashev, it's really tough. I mean, he's one of those guys, and we talked about it. You know, recently, you've got Carl Robertson, and he's such a good striker. He's a glory kickboxer. He's so accredited. He also trains with one of the best light heavyweights in the world, and I'm not afraid to say it anymore, beast in 25-8 Corey Anderson. And the combination of those two guys, you got the wrestling from Anderson, you get the striking from Robertson, put those two guys together, that could be the best fighter on the face of the planet. If you had the combination of those two, best fighter ever. Beat John Jones. Mark my words. You look at Zarrukh Adashev, he trains at a Nick Cantone MMA. What are they known for? Wrestlers. And you look at it, I mean, Claudia Gadelha, when she went there, had a little bit more success. Frankie Edgar trains there. Lance Palmer's trains there. So on. And Lance Palmer, yikes, against Bubba Jenkins. But you get my point.
A lot of people have lost recently.
But a lot of wrestlers. So for Zarrukh Adashev, it could be, am I so afraid of the takedown that I can't open up with my hands? Is it a totally different striking method than just kickboxing with the gloves up there? Because we have seen kickboxers get outstruck recently in MMA by non-strikers. Like Brendan Allen put on a striking clinic against the man himself, Carl Robertson, for not that long ago. So it's odd to see. And in a fight like this, you have a fighter, again, Ryan Benoit doesn't have the sexiest record. It's 10-7. But again, if I pick out the losses, Tim Elliott, Alatang Haley, good fighter at 135. Brandon Moreno by split decision. Ben 10 win. Josh Sampo, yikes, but again, that was 2013, and Benoit's had these long layoffs, but training out of Team Oyama for a fight like this, which is where Benoit's coming from, I mean, I would be worried if I'm Zarrukh Adashev at the threat of the takedown, too.
Oh, 100%. Ryan Benoit, and I'm going to say it again, I used this comparison once last week to describe a fighter at light heavyweight. Ryan Benoit is your Mike Perry at 125. He has big power in his hands, he has good offensive wrestling, but he struggles against guys who can kind of smother him or guys who are really technical on the feet. But if you're not any of those things, Ryan Benoit, he's got crazy big power for the size of him. And I don't mean that as like a disrespectful way. He just does have big power for the size of him. He's got head kicks. He's got overhands. Like, he's one of the few power threats at that division, not named Devison Figueiredo. So when you are in there with Ryan Benoit, you not only have to worry about being taken down, which is something that Adashev just kind of built into his whole game going into MMA. He's always worried about getting taken down. But if you are leaving your hands down, if you are not giving Ryan Benoit the respect he deserves on the feet, he's going to tune you up and hit you with some good shots. I'm not going to say that Ryan Benoit's going to go out there, crack Adashev with one shot and knock him out in the first round, but he is one of those guys who, if you're not watching your P's and Q's and you pull out of an exchange with your chin up and your hands down, he can crack you and put you down. So for Ryan Benoit, this is a great fight to get him back on track. He's one of those guys who I do think his record is a little bit deceiving. His skills are a lot better than that 10-7 record show. And even, look, if you lose a split decision to Haile Alatang, it's not the end of the world, but it's rare that you go from losing to a guy to Alatang and then you go up to fight Tim Elliott, who's quite a bit ahead of Alatang in the rankings, but it's not like Ryan Benoit got a lot worse between those fights. He's still just kind of the same fighter every single time in and every single time out. So for Benoit, I don't think we're going to see any massive improvements in his game. I still think we're going to see the same guy. He's going to go for a few takedowns. He's got decent top control. If he gets ground and pound off, that's great, and if he hits you on the feet, that's great too. So I think Benoit's going to be able to get this one done, but I think my prediction for Benoit's more based off the fact that I haven't been impressed with Zarrukh Adashev's UFC career at all up until this point.
That one round against Sumanerji, if you saw that, you combine that with some highlight reel footage over on YouTube, maybe you're a big Zarrukh Adashev fan, maybe you like that Nick Cantone MMA connection with the defensive hips. But you look at it again, Benoit with the fight against Alateng Lee, that one was at bantamweight. Then he dropped back down to flyweight, got Tim Elliott, who was kind of hitting the skids, and that fight was relatively close. I know it was a decision loss. It was unanimous, and the one against Alateng Lee was a split, but still relatively close. So overall, in terms of the odds, you look at it, Ryan Benoit actually shaved off a few points. He was originally about a -150 going into their first meeting. He opened for this fight at a -140. He's now somewhere around a -136. If you look at it for Zarrukh Adashev, open a +120. He's now at a +113. If we head on over to Tapology, it's a surprise to us as it is to you. 896 total votes, 81% for Benoit, 75% by decision for the 19% that have Adashev, 66% by decision. So Matt, final thoughts on this one. Who are you going with and what are you thinking here?
Okay, two things we know have to be true. I think Ryan Benoit is definitely better than he really is. I think we can both agree to that much. And Zarrukh Adashev, they're going to talk about his glory kickboxing experience. It is the definition of wolf tickets. Whatever the commentary tells you about him and his kickboxing background, it's great, don't get me wrong. But when I've seen you get like outstruck convincingly in 2 straight fights, I don't really care about your glory background. It doesn't mean that much to me anymore. So I guess this is the last point I have about Ryan Benoit and his weight missing. Right now, I have to assume that he can make flyweight. Now, it's very similar to Sijara Eubanks last weekend, where Sijara Eubanks, she had missed weight. We didn't really know if she was going to make weight at 125, but going into fight week and leading up to weigh-ins, I have to assume that Ryan Benoit will be able to make the weight. Now, if he doesn't make his weight, isn't that the beautiful thing, Craig? We just happen to have a show called Question Mark Kicks that allows us to go back and, you know, revise or edit any picks that we made earlier on in the week. So right now, I do have to stick with my pick of Ryan Benoit. He does have big power for this weight division if he is able to make 125. And I do have to believe that at some point he's going to be able to mix in his wrestling with his power shots and probably get a decision win.
That's it. I mean, if you look at Ryan Benoit and you look at some of the other guys that Zarrukh Adashev has taken on in the past, I mean, Tyson Nam said no mas, or well, I guess it was Zarrukh Adashev saying no mas because that fight was over so quickly. And then his next fight against Sumaderji, yeah, he had a little bit more success. He had a little bit more time to work. But overall, it was Sumaderji looking very good in that fight. So for me, I have a hard time going with a guy that's 3-3 in the UFC and really hasn't shown us what he's all about. Again, if you want to go back and see a good fight, it's the one against Tevin Dice over with Bellator. But Tevin Dice is no Ryan Benoit. So with you, I'm in agreement. Both of us going with Ryan Benoit to get the win. I can't wait for our main event. Sean Strickland, he is streaking. Is he going streaking in the quad? I don't know, but he is streaking. He's going to be taking on Uriah Hall. That is one tough fight. You're not going to want to miss that video. And the rest of them, keep it locked in with Fight Night picks. And as we always say, let's get into it.